Good day, podcast community. Pete Kane here, certified community coach, and I've got a special guest in the studio. We've been asking him for a year or two, or maybe more, and we finally got him on the show. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for being a guest. Tell our
Absolutely.
viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve, and then we'll get into our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Pete. I'm excited to just have this chat with you and kind of share a little bit about my story and what
Yeah.
I do. And so I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia. And my wife and I just opened about 6 months ago our own private practice. And so we serve a community in Woodstock, Georgia, and the greater Atlanta area, uh, doing individual counseling, couples counseling, some family counseling here and there, and really just helping people. My specialty, I'd say, is really just helping people find who they are and live that out in their everyday life. In a very general nutshell, that's kind of what we do. So I'm also a counseling supervisor, so a certified professional counseling supervisor, and supervise other associate counselors on their way to full licensure. So,
Mm, I love that.
yeah.
I have been in my journey. I've been to the therapists a bunch of times, some good, some not so good. So tell me, like, how did you step into therapy? What was that? What was that decision like, and how long ago did you do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of, maybe this is a biased answer and it's anecdotal, maybe, but I think a lot of really good counselors, because you're right, there are a lot of counselors in our country and in the world, and some are really good and some are not so good. But I think when people have experienced their own healing journey, it gives us a more insight. It gives us more insight and awareness into what that process looks like, and gives me extreme hope in order to impart that onto others. And so, really, my journey started in my own, counseling experience and my own mental health struggles at times, and having a depressive episode in college and kind of having to wrestle through that, and then ultimately go into my own counselor and working through a lot of family dynamics and just honestly purposelessness in my life. And that's probably also, again, anecdotally speaking, a lot of what I do is working on helping people find purpose. And so once I found what I felt like I was wired and knit to do, man, my life changed. And I was in college as a business major, and I was fine. I was doing okay with it. I was on the techie side of business, and I liked it okay, but it just felt like work. And it was in a community college course of intro to psych that I realized, oh my goodness, this is what I feel like I've been designed to do and what I'm here on this earth to do. And in that moment, I began to question and pursue this new path outside of the business world, and coincided with my own therapy journey, and the double working in tandem, my own counseling experience and going and studying psychology really began to form this picture of, I think I could do this, and I think I could do it really well. And was always the person that people just naturally talk to. Even to this day, I'll be walking in Publix and I'll be on some random aisle and someone just stops and starts talking to me. So the approachability aspect, and so and people feel comfortable with me. I feel very safe to enter into those places with people. So that's a little bit about my story and kind of what pushed me into doing counseling and got me to this point a little bit.
I love that. Tell me, like, I know I went to my 50th high school reunion, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to my classmates, and they say, Pete, when are you going to retire? And I said, never,
Yeah.
because there's a stat out there. I don't know where it came from, that when people retire, if they don't have purpose, connections, personal growth,
Yeah.
they just die 2 years after that. So
Absolutely.
talk to me about that meaningful purpose, that purpose. What does that mean to people, and how are you helping people in therapy to get to
Yeah.
that point?
It's a great question, and honestly, it's so true. It's and where I kind of serve population wise, my demographic client, because of my theory and approach, I kind of see the whole spectrum, at least from a teenager all the way to older adulthood.
Mhm.
Because a teenager is trying to form that sense of self on the front end and figure out what their purpose might be in this world, and trying to say, what do I want to do with my life, what job and what career, what college do I want to go to, and so kind of working on that on the front end. I see adults who are in the midst of, I was on a track, now I'm not so sure that's the track I feel like I should be on, want to be on, and now I'm feeling lost amidst the journey. And then those older adult clients who have retired and now feel like they have a lack of purpose. And so
Mhm.
to speak to what you're asking, I think really comes down to when you meet somebody for the first time, and maybe, I do this myself, and I try really hard not to. When you meet someone for the first time, it's like, hey, I'm Jonathan. What do you do for a living? And
Mhm.
we ask that question, and the response is, oh, I'm a doctor. I'm a counselor. I'm a lawyer. And we're answering a question of what do you do with a who I am. And
Mhm.
I think our identity gets really wrapped up in our purpose. And what we do as a career becomes who we are. And so if you take that career away, naturally there is a sense of who am I now? And so my big thing, and there's a guy, and I could get on a whole tangent, so I'm going to try not to, but there's a guy, he was a psychiatrist, and has a little niche theory that I really hold to in therapy. His name is Viktor Frankl, and he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning.
Mhm.
And in his book, he talks about this type of therapy he just developed called logotherapy, which is all about finding purpose and meaning. And
Mhm.
he theorizes that it's actually, and he uses the word neurosis, which is an older word, but the neurosis of society is actually due to the lack of that purpose and meaning. And people experience depression, anxiety, mood disorders due to feeling purposelessness, whether they know it or it's subconscious. And so, to kind of answer maybe in a lot of different ways, what I do in my sessions is actually starting to try to figure out who somebody is first. Because I think there's three questions we have to answer as a human. It's who am I? What am I doing here? And what's my calling, and how do I live that out?
Mhm.
And so those are kind of the things that I pursue with people in our sessions.
Wow, I love it. What when you look at where we're going through right now, there's a rapid change of AI,
Mm.
technology, displacement. I mean, it's just what you said. I've been unemployed, I think 3 times,
Hmm.
2 or 3, but every single time, just like you said, people would say, "Hey, how's that job hunting going?"
Yeah,
It's like throwing salt in the wound because or they ask
absolutely.
me what you do, and I said, "Well, I used to do this, but,
Yeah.
I ended up saying telling people I'm a free agent because I like
Yeah.
a little bit better than I'm unemployed and I'm looking, that kind of thing. With all this displacement, how do you prepare yourself?
Mm.
Because so much as consumption, we watch 4 hours of TV, we consume 2.5 hours of media, social media, and that is consuming other people's lives. But maybe you would say the same thing. We're born to create our life, our purpose, our
Mm-hmm.
connections. How do you challenge yourself to stay away from the consumption
Yeah.
and stay creative?
Yeah, man, that's a really great question. And not where I thought you were going with that. I was like all prepared to like, what do I do in a session with a client? And man, thinking personally now, like I think it's also important because if I don't know what that's like for me, how am I going to walk someone else through that? For me, it really comes down to remembering my anchor points and knowing where my worth and my value comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And also really having a lot of boundaries around that, to be honest with you. It's like it takes a lot of intentionality. If you don't have the intentionality to reflect, to maintain that anchor, you can get very, very quickly swept up in the culture and lost and swept away alongside your clients. I see it with a lot of counselors who, get swept up in a lot of what their clients are working through and working with. And it's that, secondary splashover trauma as a healthcare provider that can really begin to discourage us, create hopelessness. And so remembering those whys of why I got in here, why I'm doing this, and, holding steadfast to those anchor points is really kind of, it takes intentional reflection. And it's something I do on a regular basis myself of just especially when I'm feeling kind of blue or feeling down or feeling discouraged. I have a colleague I had a colleague in the past who she would always recommend keeping like a book of wins. And whenever she would have a win, she would write it down. And in those moments when we feel like the culture, we feel displaced, or we feel tempted to throw in the towel, it's reflecting back on those wins too. Because this profession that I'm a part of it's not instant gratification. You don't inject effort and immediately see a result. It's long-term results that can at times be very discouraging when you're not seeing those results that happen coming through.
Yeah, that this has been about 3-year journey. I started journaling after my stroke, and I probably didn't do one journal before my stroke. And I got a better sense of who I was by writing and really expressing myself through that process. I even, like you said, with wins, I do 3 wins a day because life is so busy that one day can just kind of blend into a week. And I do Friday finishers, which helps me to think about the week and what happened during the week. So we have 12 to 60,000 thoughts that go through our head. We make 500 decisions. How do you stay grounded in your process to really get those thoughts from just getting all messed up in our brain?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things I've done and learned over the years of this profession. And maybe, maybe this is what you're asking, maybe it's not too, but something that I work a lot with associate counselors is how do I manage my thoughts in my professional life and manage my thoughts in my personal life, because I don't want to bring home what I'm experiencing at work to my family. And so I think to kind of answer in a couple of different ways, to not sound repetitive, one, it takes intentionality. You're absolutely right. We have all those thoughts running through our mind every day. And if I'm not careful, I'll get swept up in them. And my brain is designed to be an efficiency engine. And so it's going to just naturally develop patterns and sweep us into those patterns if we're not careful. So I got to make sure I'm driving the car and not my brain just going on autopilot. So what that looks like is every time I get home, I'm going to throw a bunch of names out there. I feel like during our talk, one's already Viktor Frankl. Second is I'm a huge Mr. Rogers fan. Love Mr. Rogers. And I do something that Mr. Rogers does is every time I come home, I would say hi to my family, and then I immediately go upstairs and I take off my work clothes. Like, and amidst that taking off my work clothes, I'm like stripping that part of myself off. And
Mm.
it's a conscious, like, hey, I'm taking off my work cardigan and putting on my leisure home cardigan. I'm taking off
Mhm.
my work shoes, putting on my home shoes. And this mental shift for me of being able to take those thoughts and kind of what we call in counseling, put them in a container, because they're important thoughts. And I'm thinking about my clients, I'm conceptualizing, I'm thinking about what we're going to do next time, but not helpful thoughts at home. And
Mhm.
so it's kind of like putting those away in the
Mhm.
closet. And then when I put my work clothes on, I'm kind of taking those back out. So that's
Mhm.
one of the tools I do. It's
Mhm.
an intentional, it's basically like a mindfulness exercise is what we would really
Yeah.
call it, or a visualization. Like as I'm undressing and putting on my house clothes, it is like a changing of my thoughts. Another way is, I'm pretty big, somewhat fan of technology. I have a couple apps that I use too on the regular too that help me just be intentional. So when I'm not intentional, my phone can remind me to be intentional.
Mhm.
One of those is called How We Feel. I recommend it to a lot of clients, and it
Mhm.
prompts us to check in with ourselves again, to have a moment of intentionality, to check where is my emotional state at. And you're a journaler. I've tried many, many times to journal, and it's somewhat effective for me. It's not been as effective I would like it to be. I
Mhm.
still recommend it, but I just always give that, hey, I'm never going to recommend something that I don't do, but this is one of those things that I've tried and it's just not been effective for me. So this app is a way that I journal because there's a spot to kind of put a reflection amidst the feeling. And
Mhm.
so it's really just a moment to be intentional, check in with myself, have a moment of presentness, because we get on the high speed bullet train of life so often that I'm
Mhm.
stopping, reflecting, and unpacking a little bit throughout the day. So I do that twice a day,
Mm.
in the morning and the evening. And then I would even say like a lot of it is my faith experience too, that I lean on, and prayer time and things of that nature that are really important and impactful for me too.
Yeah, I was watching a video and it talked about how prayer absolutely affects our brain. And
Yeah.
it was like, I never heard that, like somebody talking about it intentionally. The benefits, I mean, I'm a believer and I have a certain faith that I lean into.
Hmm.
But when I heard that, I was like, it just kind of caught me that the brain actually likes that.
Yeah.
And this brain is so complex. So
Yeah.
I gave up social media, I gave up sugar, I gave up alcohol, I gave up all these things to try to rewire my brain.
Yep.
And I realized that social media, because I started in social media, I don't know, 15 years ago, whenever it
Hmm.
started. So I was in that business, but it didn't serve me the amount of time I was spending. Not that I was a doom stroller, but it
Yeah.
still affected me because you have to like, comment, or share, and so it's affecting the brain. What do you think in when it comes to AI? There's so much information
Mm.
out there. We can get in these patterns of just letting AI do all our work. How do
Yeah.
you critical think? How do you stay grounded?
Yeah. Great question. I think, this actually goes probably back to what you were saying a little bit earlier of like just being a consumeristic culture. And there's so much content and information at our fingertips that it's what can I continually consume? And our brain feeds off that and loves that because it wants the information in order to know how to prepare and plan and operate. And so for myself, it is like, again, it comes back to boundaries. Like I limit what I do in the social media in world. And it's an industry to continually buy your attention. Like applications, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, there are algorithms to continually give your brain the dopamine hits that it's looking for.
Yes.
And it's designed in a way to keep your attention enthralled into it. Because if you're enthralled into it, then you're not enthralled into something else, and they're making money. And so it looks like, again, intentional boundaries around screen time. Like you were saying, even with some of the choices you've made, it starts with making the choice outside of the moment. So when I'm sucked in on a YouTube video, it's really, really hard to make that choice to turn it off then. So it looks like making a choice ahead of time. So setting screen limits on, like when you're not in that triggered, brain zoned, sucked in zone state, it's, hey, I'm going to choose this. I'm going to set this screen time limit. I'm going to limit myself to only 1 or 2 social media experiences. And then to answer your question about critically thinking, I really limit my use of AI. And I know I'm probably on the minority here. And it's not that I don't use it, but I start with myself and my own thoughts. And I use AI as a, hey, check this for me. Format it, make it grammar appropriate, check my spelling, give me some suggestions. But I think it's a tool. And the tool is take my creative thoughts and help me flesh them out. And that's kind of how I use AI for. And especially in the healthcare industry, I'm a big proponent of, I don't want AI to begin to form how we do therapy, but I want it to be a tool that we can use in this profession for sure. It's just a matter of keeping it on some guidelines and guardrails for sure.
Ooh, that's good. We have a person that gave us a comment here, Jeremiah Vaughn. LCI Woodstock is a great counseling practice. So Jeremiah, thank you for your comment. We appreciate that. And anybody out there, if you just put something in the comments, if you have a question of any sort, as we're talking to Jonathan, we'll certainly address that. So thank you, Jeremiah. Appreciate that. Tell me, when it comes to men and women, I see it in like coaching. Like the guys are the macho guys. I want to figure it all out. I want to do it on my own. And, therapy is humbling ourselves to say, I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
You see a difference between men and women when it comes to, leaning into therapy?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an interesting point, in that in the public eye, I think there is more of a guardedness in the aspects of manhood or being a man. It is socially more acceptable. This is something I talk a lot about with clients. It is, at least in our Western world, the appropriate social emotion for a man to express is anger. And so a lot of our emotions actually come out as anger, even if it's really not anger. There's a lot, and there's a tool that I use, and it's called the anger iceberg. And it's this idea that there's so much under the surface that funnels out as anger, when it's really trying to cipher and figure out what's the true emotion that we're experiencing, but it's being expressed this way. And for women, on average, the socially acceptable emotion to express is sadness, or anxiety, even, to be more emotional in general. And so that's kind of the social stigma that I see, and what kind of research shows. But what I see in the counseling room is, when the door is shut and it's just me and that other individual, the guardedness comes down a lot quicker, because no one else is there. There's no embarrassment. There's no fear. It's a little bit of a more easier barrier to entry for vulnerability to occur. And so I don't see a huge difference between men and women in the counseling room.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in our social experience in our world, you do see a difference because of that. Honestly, what it comes down to, in my opinion, is shame and a fear of showing that self that is flawed. And men are really guarded around our emotions for that reason in the public eye.
What do you think when you look at the future, having a young daughter and you see, man, 10, 15 years out, what are you most excited about and what are you most cautious about?
Yeah, just as for her to experience in 10 years, I think, I can answer the cautiousness one very quickly. Mm-hmm. I think I'm cautious about just how much media is a part of our generation in this life. I see the effects that it has on teens as they grow, and recognizing, even from a young age, my daughter just turned 4, watching a screen that is right here and having, she is amazing, even at 4 years old, to be able to operate this device that, when I was 4, we didn't have. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's some definite cautiousness around how much technology is influencing her life. It's unavoidable. And I think that's where it takes a lot of boundaries and guidelines that we as parents are putting for her and teaching her. I think there's a big difference between shielding her from it and not having her experience it, but also experience it and be shown and modeled a healthy behavior around it. Mm-hmm. And then I think what I'm excited about for her, man, I'm trying to parse out like what I'm excited about for myself and what I'm excited about for her to experience. But I think I'm just excited for her to be able to experience more things. I mean, that's so general, but she's 4 and watching her brain develop and watching her begin to just see more of the world and understand more. Mm-hmm. There is this hunger and excitement and eagerness to know more. She's a person of questions. She loves to ask questions and wants to know the whys behind things. And so I think I'm just excited for her to begin to be able to understand more and see the world from a more developed lens and experience relationships. I'm excited for her to experience connection apart from me and my wife and have those deeper relationships.
That is good. What do you think when it comes to relationships? I heard somebody say this is like the average person has like 1 or 2 real friends at the end of their life, and they can't even put together enough people to carry a casket. Yeah. What do you think? What's your best tip on relationships that you could share with us?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I'm trying to think of how to answer this because I have an answer in my mind, but I don't have my glass board to map it out with you on. What I do a lot with clients is talking a lot about vulnerability is the key to connection. Brene Brown is another big name that I ascribe to, and she talks so much about this and how for relationship to develop, there has to be the opportunity for rejection. And so for true vulnerability, there's the opportunity for connection and also the opportunity for rejection. And when we're vulnerable and we connect, that deepens that relationship. And so I think my tip in developing true healthy relationships is developing appropriate vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And what I do and talk about with clients and I map it out is I'm not saying be 100% vulnerable with every single person because that's not safe. So if I'm in Publix and I'm going through the grocery line and the grocery store attendant says, "Hey, how's your day going?" And I tell them, "Man, it's been one of the worst days of my life. I'm barely able to get out of bed. My dad passed away. I'm depressed. I'm struggling. I just don't know if I can make it."
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to look at me and they're going to say, "Whoa, I'm so sorry."
Yeah, that's heavy.
Well, good luck. Have a good day. And they're on to the next person, right? And so
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
that's being vulnerable at a great extent, but not with the level of where that relationship is at. So there's something I talk about and use for clients to kind of help visualize this. And it's this idea of what I call the funnel of vulnerability. And it starts really big and wide up here, and there's a lot of people. But as you go down the funnel, your vulnerability increases and the number of people you're that vulnerable with decreases. So at the very bottom of the funnel, you're 100% transparent,
Mm-hmm.
but there may only be a couple people.
Mm-hmm.
And some people's funnel doesn't look like a funnel, it looks like a tube. Everybody's at the same level. Or some people, it looks like it's really shallow and nobody's at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's developing these amount of how vulnerable am I with people and trying to push people and give up people the opportunity to move down the funnel. Now, again, if somebody shows they're not safe to be vulnerable with, then they kind of move back up the funnel. And it's a very fluid motion. And the key variable of where someone is in the funnel is how much trust we have with that person. And so I think, the tip would be develop, and a funnel is a kind of a goal to assess to. Not everybody looks like a perfect funnel, but developing deeper relationships by practicing vulnerability at that appropriate level.
Mm. We know each other through Grace Church, and I've had people say, like, "Why do you like it?" And, I'll say, I will share community, that it's a safe community. It's a wonderful community. What do you think community, how does that play into therapy? How important is it? And what would you be able to share with our community or our viewers about that?
Yeah. Community is, in my opinion, essential. Like, we as humans are wired for connection. When you have another human and you're vulnerable with them, I already shared this, but when you're vulnerable with that human and they accept you and you build a level of connection. You see this in our anatomy too. When two humans embrace, when there is skin to skin contact, and we talk about this with babies, when that newborn is born, you need that skin to skin contact to build attachment. Because if you're embracing and touching skin for at least 5 to 10 seconds, oxytocin starts to be produced in the body. And oxytocin is the connection hormone. And so it's really important to have people around you. And I'm not saying go out and hug every single person that you see and hold them for 10 seconds, but also like that level of vulnerability is building connection. So we're wired for connection as humans. We're not, we're not meant to do this world and this journey alone. And something that I talk about, again, you're getting all my kind of bangers with my clients a little bit, but I think there's three important variables that need to be present for therapy to be highly effective. And the first variable is awareness. We got to develop awareness, because I can't work on something if I'm not aware of it. And so I may have this strong, which is the second one, desire. I may have a super strong desire to work on something, but if I don't know what I want to work on, we're not going to get very far. So a lot of even the initial work in therapy is developing awareness of where are things at and what are we doing? And then desire comes in very strong. And I think, sidebar or back up a second, awareness has to deal with acceptance too. Like I have to be accepting of what I see too. So I think that kind of goes hand in hand in one point. Second would be desire. I have to want it. A great metaphor for therapy and the work that we do is it's working out, right? If I want to get jacked, I have to know what's the right, workout routine to do. What are the muscle groups I need to work? If I'm just doing bench press all day, every day, I'm not getting my body what it needs. It's actually unhealthy for my body to just work one muscle group every single day. And so we have to be aware, we have to accept, we have to want it, because if I don't want it, then I'm not going to engage in the hard aspects of it. And then this comes back to your question, to circle back to why community is so important, is that's really the third variable, is you have to have support, because my awareness and my desire fluctuates day to day. Some days I want it more than others. And some days I don't see things and I may have a blind spot. And so living in community and support is really helping come alongside us and carry us when that desire goes down, and helps point out things that I can't see. And so talking about Grace Church, like that's, a lot of churches do small groups and things of that nature. And that's where we have these groups where we're living in community, and it's really helpful to be able to be carried by other people, to be supported, and to be able to have things called out that maybe I'm not seeing.
Yeah, that's so good. While you're talking about that, you just reminded me. Let me see if I can. Yes, here we go. So for our audience, Jonathan is one of our speakers that will be at Grace Church on the 30th. So if you're listening to this or can share this, this is an event where 12 speakers will be sharing their insights, their expertise to the people out there. So you can come for free, you can meet Jonathan, you can meet our other speakers, and you can learn. And that's a great way for community too, because our relationships, I don't know who said this, but the quality of your life is the quality of your relationships. So if you don't lean into community relationships, you can have, a big spot of emptiness out there. So feel free to go to petekane.me/live. You can register. And if we figure this out, there's a gift waiting for each person to register. We're publishing our book and we're trying to get it out before next Saturday. But definitely come, meet Jonathan, meet our other speakers, come to a community of people that are growing, connecting, and enjoying each other's relationships. So I want to ask you this. I have one question, and I wanted you to tell how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah.
I had a guest on my podcast. This was maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and we didn't know how we connected, but he said a thing called PTSD, which we all know what that is. But he said, take the D and separate it and put G in there for growth. And we all go through tough times. There's nobody's immune to it, but we can either be bitter or better and grow through our tough times. Is there a time in your journey, in your life, that you look back on right now and say, man, I didn't really enjoy going through it, but I grew so much through that time of my life? Is there a time you can share? No, not the details, but just a time that you felt this was a really great time that I grew as a person.
Man, I think, what you're also talking about too, Pete, is the ability to reflect back on your life and see those highlight moments, right? Where when we're going through it, I always say it's a lot easier to see things in the rearview mirror than it is as they're coming at you. And so I would not have said this while I was doing it, but, experiencing some of these moments, I do see growth that came from them. Man, I'm trying to pick one because there's probably a bunch that I could pull from. I would say one aspect, and maybe this is not as personal as it could be, but when I first graduated from my graduate program, and my wife and I moved to Georgia, That period of time was really difficult for us. We had community, we had relationships, I had my connections. I went to school in Dallas, Texas, and I had a lot of connections in Dallas because of that. I had professors who knew people, and all of a sudden I'm taking this relationship of the church that we're in, the small group that we're a part of, and we're just kind of wiping that slate clean and starting over. And it was a difficult season because here I am freshly graduated, ready to go and therapize the world. And I don't have relationships. I don't have connections. I did have my family here, which was really the relationships we leaned on, which was important. But for about a year, we started to find some relationships, and they weren't the ones that we were really looking for, unfortunately, or they didn't reciprocate the desire that we had to connect. And so we didn't necessarily find a community that was investing in us the same way we were investing and wanting to invest in them. And a part of that season was me starting, my first job in the therapy world, which I worked for 3 years at a psychiatric hospital as I was getting my full license in Georgia. And so that whole season of working in the hospital, going through a lot of, even personal relationships with my wife and finding these new communities and being in this new area and also working in a psychiatric hospital was definitely a formative time.
Yeah.
And I joke, and I think, Pete, you may have even heard me say this before, but I feel very grateful to have found the community that we're in now. And I feel like there's a video game back when I was a kid that I used to play called Roller Coaster Tycoon, and you build a roller coaster theme park, and you could pick people up in the park and drop them, and they dangle and flail, and you drop them in front of a ride, and then they'd go into the ride. And that's kind of how I feel like I found Grace a little bit, of just getting dropped in front of it and being grateful to have found a community that was wanting to invest the same way we were wanting to invest in them. But man, there was tremendous growth. I would never have desired that season, but the amount of growth I had in my personal relationship with my wife, the growth I had as a therapist, man, learning all I did and the experience I had in the hospital was invaluable, but very difficult to go through for sure.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I have one question after this, but tell me, how can people get a hold of Jonathan if they want to, pursue, look into, get a hold of you? What would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, you're more than welcome to email me. It's my email is jonathan@lciwoodstock.com. My wife and I's practice is called Logos Counseling Initiative. And that word Logos really is an homage to that purpose and meaning work that I was talking about. Viktor Frankl's therapy is called logotherapy. So it's kind of an homage to him and an homage to finding the true purpose and a kind of faith integrated way as well, finding deeper meaning in this world too. So you can Google Logos Counseling Initiative, and you can see our website. You can reach out to us through there, and also through email. And we're developing a social media presence as well. But right now, those are probably the best ways to go about doing it.
Awesome. And I want to encourage our viewers to share this with people they think need to meet Jonathan and what he's doing in the community, what he's doing to help people in that journey of life. Because hey, it's a up and down, sideways, all kinds of stuff, and you don't want to do it alone. Together, you're better. Have somebody help you through if you're going through difficult times. So, what would be the one thing that you would want our viewers to take home from our time on this podcast?
Yeah, man. Again, so many things I'd love for them to hear. I think to echo what you just said, Pete, is to realize that they don't have to be doing this journey of life alone. I think we're talking about community and support and relationships, and I tell every client I see this. that counseling is a relationship. That's truly what therapy is. When you really boil it down to a nutshell, 90% of what therapy is relationship. And it's a therapeutic relationship, but I am a human. And I think this goes back to, even not to reopen this door, but that's where I think AI really gets in trouble, is that it is not a human. It's a machine, it's an algorithm, it's a program that does not have true emotions, and you cannot connect with. We pseudo connect with it. But having another human, whether in person sitting across from or even over a screen, that we can connect with, that is the ground floor basis for healing in the work that we do. The modalities, the techniques, the theory, the treatment style, all of that is filtered through relationship. But I would just encourage, people who, if they're struggling or if they're lost in life, you don't have to go through this journey alone. And a lot of times we don't know where to turn or where to go, or we're afraid to do so. And that's also why, or we can't afford to do so. That's another big component too. And which is why we as a practice have really tried to structure, we want to be able to be accessible to anybody and everybody. And so having different layers and tiers of experienced counselors to accommodate, we want to be for a lack of a better word, like a one-stop shop. If you need something, we can be able to provide it for you with me or my associates, to be able to be in the thick and thin and the deep, difficult spots with you.
Wow, that is so good. Jonathan, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us and to share your journey and the impact that you're making in our community. We appreciate all that you're doing and everything you're doing. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pete. It was a pleasure.